There's a price you pay when you trust your own family to show up, and I paid it in public. That night, I sat in the middle row of a school auditorium, holding a program with my daughter's name printed in bold. I kept checking my phone, even after it stopped lighting up. The stage lights were too bright, and the empty seats felt louder than applause. Someone had left a single paper cup under our row. When my daughter walked on stage and looked straight at me, smiling like nothing was wrong, I realized I had misunderstood everything about my life. There's a price you pay when you trust your own family to show up, and I paid it in public. The night of the recital, I parked 3 blocks away because the school lot was full. I remember that detail because it annoyed me at the time. I had left work early, still wearing my navy slacks and flats, and I didn't want to walk that far in the cold. My daughter, Emily, didn't complain once. She held her violin case with both hands like it was something fragile and expensive, even though we'd bought it used from a man who met us in a grocery store parking lot 2 years earlier. The auditorium doors were already open when we got there. I could hear the muffled sound of tuning strings and someone coughing into a microphone. Inside, everything smelled like old wood and floor cleaner. The seats were that faded red color schools never bother to replace. I scanned the room without thinking. The way you do when you're expecting people. Middle row, left side. I saw it right away. Empty. I told myself it was fine. We were early. Emily's solo wasn't until the second half. I checked my phone and saw the same message thread I'd been rereading all week. Wouldn't miss it. So proud of her. We'll be there. I folded the program carefully and set it on my lap. Emily leaned over and whispered that she needed to check in with her teacher backstage. I kissed the top of her head and told her I'd be right there. While she was gone, I counted the rows. I watched people come in. Grandparents with flowers. Parents with phones already out. A man in front of me unwrapped a cough drop too loudly. Someone had left a single paper cup under our row, tipped on its side, like it had rolled there and stopped. I checked my phone again. No new messages. When Emily came back, she looked calm. Too calm. She sat next to me and opened her case just enough to touch the violin, like she needed to make sure it was still real. "Did Grandma text?" she asked, not looking at me. "Probably parking," I said. The words came out easily. I'd practiced them in my head all afternoon. The recital started on time. One student after another walked on stage, bowed, played, bowed again. Applause rose and fell. I clapped when everyone else did. I kept my eyes on the aisle, waiting for familiar faces to slide into the empty seats beside me. They didn't. By the time the intermission came, my phone felt heavier in my hand. I'd stopped checking it every few minutes and started checking it every 30 seconds. The screen stayed dark. I sent a single text to my mother. "We're here. Emily's doing great." No response. Emily didn't say anything during intermission. She drank water from the fountain and stood very still while her teacher adjusted the music stand for her solo. I noticed her hands were shaking just a little. I told her to take a deep breath. I told her she'd practiced this piece 100 times. I told her I loved her. She nodded and went backstage. I stayed in my seat. When they called her name, I stood up without meaning to. I sat back down just as quickly, my face hot. Emily walked out under the stage lights, violin tucked under her chin, bow held steady. She scanned the audience once, just a quick glance, the way she always did. Her eyes passed over the empty seats. She played anyway. She didn't miss a note. Her posture was perfect. I knew because I'd watched her practice in our living room for months, standing barefoot on the rug, stopping and starting when she got frustrated. I knew every part of that piece. I knew where she usually smiled, where she usually closed her eyes. She didn't smile this time. When it was over, the applause came fast and loud. I clapped until my palms stung. I stood up again. Emily bowed once and walked off stage without looking at me. Afterward, in the hallway, parents crowded around their kids. Flowers were passed from hand to hand. Phones flashed. I waited near the exit, holding Emily's coat. When she came out, she went straight to me. "They didn't come," she said. It wasn't a question. I opened my mouth to explain. Parking, traffic, emergencies. All the usual words lined up, ready to be used. But Emily was already nodding, like she'd expected it. "It's okay," she said. I knew they were busy. She said it the same way she said she was fine when she scraped her knee. Like it was something she'd learned to say so I wouldn't worry. In the car, she stared out the window the whole way home. She held the violin case on her lap, both hands wrapped around the handle. At a red light, she finally looked at me. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked. I pulled over without thinking. Right there on the side of the road, under a flickering streetlight. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get enough air. "No," I said. "You did everything right." She nodded again and turned back to the window. That night, after she went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone in front of me. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. I scrolled through social media without meaning to. There they were. My mother, my brother, my sister-in-law, all smiling in a booth at a sports bar across town. Wings on the table, drinks raised. The timestamp was from 20 minutes into Emily's solo. I didn't cry. Not then. I turned the phone face down and sat there until the screen went dark. At the time, I told myself it was just one night, one mistake. Families mess up. People forget. I told myself I'd overreacted, that Emily would forget, that this didn't mean anything. I was wrong about that. And I was wrong about what it would cost us to keep pretending nothing was wrong. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm and lay there listening to the house. The heat kicked on with its usual rattle. A truck groaned past on the main road. Emily's room stayed quiet. For a few minutes, I let myself believe she'd slept fine, that the night before had slid off her the way small disappointments sometimes do when you're 10. Then I heard the soft squeak of her bedroom door, bare feet on the hallway floor. She padded into the bathroom and shut the door without turning on the light. Emily used to hum in the mornings. She used to do it without even noticing, little broken pieces of songs while she brushed her teeth or fixed her ponytail. That morning, there was nothing. Just the faucet, the toilet flush, and the quiet click of her door closing again. I made breakfast anyway. 2 pieces of toast, peanut butter, sliced banana on one plate. I packed her lunch the way I always did: turkey sandwich cut in half, apple, pretzels, a little note with a dumb joke, because she liked rolling her eyes at me and then saving the note in her desk. I poured coffee and stared at the phone while it brewed. No messages from my mother. No apology, no excuse. At 7:12, my phone buzzed once. My heart jumped like it always did when her name might appear. But it was a bank alert about my balance dropping below a threshold I'd set months ago, back when I'd promised myself I'd be more responsible about money. I almost laughed at the timing. Instead, I felt my throat tighten. Emily came into the kitchen dressed for school, her hair pulled back, her violin case by the back door. She looked neat and ready, like always. But there was a stiffness to her movements, as if she was trying not to bump into anything. "Do you want to practice before we go?" I asked, keeping my voice light. She shook her head. "I already did it yesterday." "You did great," I said. She shrugged. Emily had never called her playing fine before. She used words like good or bad or I messed up the second page or I hate that part. Fine sounded like something she'd heard adults say when they didn't want to talk. I drove her to school, watching her in the rearview mirror. She stared down at her hands in her lap, picking at a hangnail. When I pulled into the drop-off line, she unbuckled and opened the door quickly. "Hey," I said, "look at me." She paused, halfway out. She turned her face toward me. Her eyes were normal, no tears, no anger, just that careful blankness that scared me more than crying would have. "You didn't do anything wrong," I said again. "What happened last night wasn't on you." 8. She nodded like she understood, but her mouth pressed into a thin line. "I love you," I added. "I know," she said. And then she grabbed her backpack and walked away without turning back. After she disappeared into the building, I sat in the car for a full minute, hands on the steering wheel, breathing through my nose like I was trying not to smell something rotten. Then I drove to my office and tried to pretend I was a person who could focus on emails and reports. I work as a home appraiser. It's not glamorous. People picture real estate as shiny suits and commission checks, but my side of it is clipboards, measuring tapes, crawl spaces, and quiet neighborhoods where you can hear someone's dog barking 2 streets over. I spend my days taking photos of kitchens and noting whether the roof looks newer than the comps. I write numbers down. I sign my name. I am precise and careful because being wrong can ruin someone's deal. That day, precision felt impossible. My hands kept drifting to my phone. Between inspections, I found myself opening the photo from the sports bar again and again, zooming in like it might change. My mother's smile froze on the screen. My brother, Mark, sat beside her, broad shoulders filling the frame, his arms slung around his wife like he owned the place. There was a basket of wings in front of them and a basket of fries, and I could almost hear my mother's voice in my head, bright and excited, telling a waitress, "Oh, we'll take another round, honey." I knew that voice well. I grew up with it. My mother? Donna Reed, yes. That was really her name. And yes, she loved the joke, had a way of being warm and charming when it benefited her. She could compliment a stranger's earrings, slip a 20 into a church donation basket, talk about family values with a straight face, and then turn around and make you feel small in your own kitchen. When I was a kid, I used to think she just liked my brother more because he was older and louder. Mark was the kind of kid who took up space. He played football, he broke things, and shrugged when people got mad. He made teachers laugh. He could walk into a room and own it, without trying. My mother watched him like he was a show she never got tired of. I was the opposite. I was quiet. I liked books. I liked drawing. I liked lining my colored pencils up by shade. I did well in school, and brought home A's like they were proof I belonged. My mother would glance at my report card and say, "That's nice," and then call Mark into the room to ask about practice. At family dinners, the stories were always about him. Mark's touchdown, Mark's funny comment, Mark's teacher who didn't appreciate his personality. If I tried to talk, my mother would nod without listening, eyes flicking back to him like a magnet. If I got upset, she'd tell me I was too sensitive. If I asked why I got less attention, she'd say, "Don't start. You know how you get." I learned early that the easiest way to survive was to become useful, helpful, low maintenance, the one who didn't cause trouble. When I turned 16, my mother threw Mark a party in our backyard that looked like something out of a magazine. She rented a tent. She hired a DJ. She ordered a custom cake shaped like a football. Mark's friends filled the yard, and my mother floated around in a new dress, laughing and taking pictures. I remember carrying trays of soda out from the kitchen, trying not to spill, trying to be grateful I wasn't invisible. 2 years later, when I graduated high school, my mother told me she didn't think a party was necessary. "You'll be going to college," she said. "That's expensive enough." She handed me a card with $50 inside and told me to make good choices. That pattern didn't change when I became an adult. It just wore different clothes. When Mark bought his first house, my mother took a day off work and helped him paint. She brought sandwiches. She made a big deal about it to everyone she knew. When I bought my condo, she told me congratulations over the phone and then asked if I could drive her to the airport the next weekend because Mark was busy. When Mark got married, my mother cried during the ceremony, loud enough that people turned to look. She talked about how proud she was of him, how he was such a good man. When I got married, she spent most of the reception telling anyone who would listen that my dress would have looked better if I'd chosen a different neckline. When my marriage fell apart 5 years later, she didn't ask what happened. She didn't ask if I was okay. She asked if I'd done something to push him away. I should have seen the connection the second I found out I was pregnant. Emily's father left when I was 7 months along. He didn't disappear in a dramatic way. There was no screaming fight and slammed doors. He just started coming home later, then not at all. One night he packed a bag while I sat on the couch, swollen ankles propped up, and told me he wasn't ready for this. He said it like he was describing a movie he didn't like. Then he walked out and never came back. I called my mother the next day because I thought, stupidly, that pregnancy might soften her. I thought becoming a grandmother might make her kinder. She sighed into the phone and said, "Well, Rachel, that's what happens when you don't pick better." I still remember standing in my living room with the phone pressed to my ear, staring at the blank wall, feeling something in me go hollow. After Emily was born, I kept trying. I kept bringing Emily to family birthdays and barbecues. I kept smiling through the little comments about how she was so shy and so serious and not like Mark's boys. I kept sending photos, updates, school pictures. I kept giving my mother chances because I wanted Emily to have a family. I wanted her to have grandparents. I wanted her to feel claimed, and for a while, my mother would show up occasionally, always late, always with some excuse, always with the kind of gift you grab at the last minute. Clearance toys, generic clothes in the wrong size. She'd take a few photos for Facebook and leave early. Mark's kids, though, got the big things. New bikes, tickets to games, trips to Florida with grandma, posted online with captions about making memories. I would swallow the sting and tell myself it didn't matter. Emily had me. Emily was loved. Emily didn't need all that. But last night, in that auditorium, when my daughter stood under the lights and scanned the crowd for people who promised they'd be there, I saw exactly what I'd been pretending not to see. It wasn't that my family forgot. It was that they chose not to come. And now that Emily had seen it too, I knew I was running out of ways to explain it away. The first sign that the damage had landed wasn't a meltdown or a tantrum. It was how quiet Emily got around her violin. Usually, the case lived open in the corner of the living room like a piece of furniture. She'd come home, drop her backpack, wash her hands, and go straight to it before I even finished asking how her day was. Music would float through the house while I cooked dinner or folded laundry. Sometimes she played the same 4 measures over and over until she got it right, her brows pinched, her mouth tight with focus. I used to tease her that she was going to wear a groove into the air. 2 days after the recital, the case stayed closed. On Tuesday afternoon, I came in from work and found her at the kitchen table with her homework spread out, pencils lined up perfectly. She looked up and smiled when I walked in, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Hey, Em, practice before dinner?" I asked, keeping it casual, like I hadn't been watching that closed case like it might bite me. She didn't even glance at it. "I'm kind of tired. You've got orchestra tomorrow," I said. "You don't want to feel rusty." She shrugged and bent back over her worksheet. "It's fine." That word again. Fine, flat, final. I made spaghetti. I asked about school. She answered with short sentences and took tiny bites, like she was eating to be polite. After dinner, she rinsed her plate without being asked and disappeared into her room. When I passed her door later, I heard the faint clicking of keys. She was on her tablet, probably watching videos. Normally, she'd be practicing scales or texting her friend Ava about who sat where in orchestra. That night, nothing. I tried not to push. I'd learned the hard way that pressing Emily too hard made her retreat further. She was like that even as a toddler. If she got overwhelmed, she went quiet, small, contained. But the quiet wasn't peace. It was a kind of folding inward, like she was putting parts of herself away so they couldn't get hurt. By Thursday, her teacher called. I was between appointments, sitting in my car outside a ranch house with peeling shutters, typing notes into my tablet when my phone rang. The screen showed the school's number. My stomach dropped. "Hi, this is Miss Keller," the voice said. "Emily's orchestra director." I sat up straighter. "Is she okay?" "She's not in trouble," Miss Keller said quickly, the way educators do when they know how that question sounds to a parent. "I just wanted to check in. Emily's usually very engaged, and this week she's been different." My fingers tightened around the phone. "Different how?" "She's been avoiding sectionals. She asked to sit in the back during warm-ups. She's not making eye contact when I give feedback. And yesterday, she told me she didn't want to do the spring solo auditions anymore. For a second, I couldn't speak. The spring auditions were everything to her. She'd been counting down to them since October. She'd made a list of pieces she wanted to try. She'd taped it to her closet door with pink washi tape. "I didn't know that," I said finally. "I figured you might not," Miss Keller said gently. When I asked her why, she said, "It doesn't matter. People don't really want to hear me anyway." The air in the car felt thick. I stared out at the house in front of me, at the faded welcome sign on the porch, at the plastic kids' toys scattered in the yard, and my vision blurred. "Thank you for telling me," I managed. "I'll talk to her." "Emily is very talented," Miss Keller said. "But talent is fragile when a kid starts believing it's not worth sharing. I'm not trying to alarm you. I just don't want her to disappear." After I hung up, I sat there with my phone in my lap until the screen went dark. My heartbeat felt loud, like it was pushing against my ribs. I thought about Emily's face under those stage lights, the way she'd scanned the crowd without panicking, the way she'd kept playing anyway. I'd told myself she was strong. I'd told myself she was fine. She wasn't fine. She was adapting. That night, I didn't ask her to practice. I didn't say the word recital. I waited until after dinner, after the dishes were done, after she'd brushed her teeth and pulled on her pajamas. I followed her into her room and sat on the edge of her bed. Her room was neat in that way. Kids' rooms aren't usually neat. Stuffed animals lined up, blankets folded, books stacked in little piles. She had a poster of the Cleveland Orchestra above her desk because she'd begged me for it after we watched a concert online. On her shelf sat a snow globe my mother had given her last Christmas. The kind you buy in a gift shop, with glitter that stuck to the plastic like it was tired. Emily climbed into bed and pulled the quilt up to her chin. "What's up?" she asked. Careful. I took a breath. Miss Keller called me today. Her eyes flicked away instantly. "Why?" "She said you've been quiet in orchestra," I said. "And she said you told her you don't want to audition for the spring solo." Emily's mouth tightened. She stared at the quilt like it had answers. "Is that true?" A long pause. Then she nodded once. "Why?" I asked. Soft. She let out a slow breath through her nose, like she was trying not to cry. "Because it's embarrassing." "What's embarrassing?" I asked. "Trying," she said, the word sharp. "Trying hard, and then nobody cares." My throat burned. "Emily." She cut me off, still not looking at me. "It's not a big deal. It's just music." It felt like being punched. Music was never just music to her. It was the thing that made her light up, the thing that made her stand taller. If she was calling it just music, it meant she was pushing it away on purpose. "Did last weekend make you feel like nobody cares?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Her fingers worried the edge of the quilt. Then she said, very quietly, "They didn't come." "I know," I said. "And I'm so sorry." She finally looked up at me, and her eyes were glossy but stubborn. "It's okay. Grandma has stuff. Uncle Mark has stuff. They're busy." "That doesn't make it okay," I said, and my voice cracked on the word okay. Emily blinked fast. "It's fine. I'm used to it." I stared at her. "Used to it?" She shrugged, and tears slipped out anyway, silent and straight down her cheeks. "They come to Liam's games. They post pictures. Grandma calls him her little champ. She says I'm sweet." My chest tightened. Liam was Mark's oldest boy. 12, confident, loud, always the center of attention. My mother went to his games like she was on the coaching staff. She wore his team colors. She brought snacks for the other parents. She posted photos of him every weekend with captions about pride and hard work. Emily wiped her cheek with her sleeve, angry at the tears. "It's okay," she said again, but her voice shook. "I don't need them." I leaned forward. "You shouldn't have to not need them. It's not round." She looked at me like she didn't understand the difference. I reached for her hand. Her fingers were cold. "Listen to me," I said. "You did nothing wrong. You played beautifully. You are not less important than anyone." Emily's face crumpled for a second. Then she tightened it back up. "If I was better, they would have come," she said. The sentence hit me so hard I had to swallow. "No," I said immediately. She stared at the wall behind me. "Maybe if I played something cooler. Or if I did sports. Or if I was louder." I felt my hands shake. "Emily," I said, forcing calm, "you don't have to change who you are to make people show up. If someone only shows up when you're a certain kind of kid, that's their problem, not yours." She didn't argue. She just lay back and pulled the quilt up higher, like she wanted to disappear under it. After she fell asleep, I walked into the living room and stood staring at the violin case in the corner. The black latches reflected the lamplight. It looked like a closed mouth. I picked up my phone and scrolled back to the message thread with my mother. I reread the "wouldn't miss it." I reread the "so proud." My fingers hovered over the call button. I called anyway. It rang 4 times before she answered, breathy like she'd been laughing. "Hi, Rachel." "Hi," I said. My voice sounded too controlled, like I was holding it down with both hands. "I want to talk about the recital." A pause. "Oh my God, are you still on that?" My stomach turned. Emily noticed. "She's pulling back at school. Her teacher called me." Donna sighed, long and dramatic. "Rachel, kids move on. You're making this bigger than it is." "You were at a bar," I said, and I surprised myself with how flat the words came out. "I saw the pictures." The timestamp was during her solo. It's, another pause. Shorter this time. "We had plans. You said you were coming," I said. "We had a long week," she snapped, the warmth gone. "And frankly, Emily's things they're quiet. It's not like a game where everyone's cheering. Mark wanted to watch the second half. Your brother needed a break." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles hurt. "Emily needed you." Donna's voice hardened. "Don't put that on me. You're her mother. You handle it. And you know what? You've always been like this. Keeping score. Looking for ways to be hurt. I felt something inside me go very still. I'm not keeping score, I said. I'm watching my daughter learn that promises don't matter. Donna laughed once, short and disbelieving. Oh, please. She's 10. She'll get over it. She asked me if she did something wrong, I said, and my voice finally broke. She thinks she's not worth showing up for. Donna made a sound like impatience. Then tell her not to think that. You're making her sensitive, Rachel. Just like you. My hand was trembling. My face felt hot. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the phone. I wanted to say every cruel thing she'd ever said back to her and watch her flinch. Instead, I said, I have to go, and I hung up. I stood there in my living room, phone in hand, staring at that closed violin case, and I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit for years. This wasn't going to get better on its own. And if I kept pretending it was normal, Emily was going to learn the same lesson I did, that you earn love by shrinking, by being easy, by accepting whatever you're given, and calling it enough. I couldn't let that happen. Not anymore. The next week, I made myself busy in the ways that look healthy from the outside. I signed Emily up for a Saturday morning youth ensemble at the Community Arts Center. I arranged a playdate with Ava and her mom, who brought homemade cookies and didn't say a single weird thing about my kid being quiet. I took Emily to the library and let her check out as many books as she could carry. I bought a new set of strings for her violin, even though my bank app kept nagging me with low balance alerts. I tried to rebuild her world with small, solid pieces. It helped, but not in the way I wanted. Emily started playing again. Just a little. Not the old way, where she'd burst into the living room after school and open the case like she couldn't wait. Now she practiced behind her closed bedroom door. Short sessions, the music softer, almost cautious. When I asked how it went, she'd say, good, and then change the subject, like she didn't want to give the violin too much power over her feelings. One evening, I found the spring audition list still taped to her closet, but the edges were peeling. A corner had been folded down. I didn't touch it. I just stood there for a second in the doorway of her room, feeling the ache of what a kid will quietly give up when she thinks wanting something makes her foolish. In the middle of all that, my mother stayed silent. No follow-up call, no apology. Not even one of those cheap little thinking of you texts she sometimes sent when she wanted to reset the tone without admitting she'd done anything wrong. The absence felt intentional, like she was waiting for me to get tired, to come crawling back into my role as the agreeable one. I tried, once more, to keep the bridge from burning. On Sunday afternoon, I sent a group text to my mother, my brother Mark, and Mark's wife Jenna. Emily has her spring solo auditions coming up. She's nervous but working hard. Would love it if you could encourage her. I watched the typing bubbles appear and disappear, then nothing. 10 minutes later, Jenna sent a thumbs-up emoji. That was it. That night, I found Emily sitting at the kitchen counter, drawing in her notebook. She was sketching a little stage with a stick-figure violinist and rows of chairs that were all empty. She saw me looking and snapped the notebook shut. It's just a doodle, she said. Too fast. I know, I said. I wanted to tell her none of this was her fault. I wanted to tell her grown-ups were messed up sometimes. I wanted to promise her it would never happen again. But promises felt fragile to me now, like glass. So I said, hey, do you want to pick dinner next Friday? We can do a special night. Just us. Emily looked at me cautiously. Like, out? Yeah, I said. Up? She thought for a moment, then said, can we go to that place with the giant fish tank? The one by the mall? I asked. She nodded, and a small smile finally showed up, quick and shy. It's relaxing. Fish tank dinner it is, I said, and I meant it. That was the week I started to believe we could build something separate. A smaller life, maybe, but a safer one. Then, on Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed while I was in line at a coffee shop. It was an email notification. Subject line, family update please read. It was from my mother. My stomach tightened automatically, the same way it always did when her name popped up. I stepped out of line and opened it right there, standing near the napkin station. The email was long, formatted like she was sending a memo at work. There were bullet points, underlined phrases, capital letters where she wanted emphasis. She was announcing that Mark and Jenna were making a major investment in their lake house. The lake house wasn't even Mark's first home. It was a second property they'd bought 2 years earlier, a place they used on weekends in the summer and posted about constantly. A wide deck, a fire pit, A dock with a little motorboat. My mother called it the family retreat, even though I'd been there exactly twice. According to the email, they were expanding it, adding a sunroom, adding a guest suite, redoing the deck, possibly building a bigger dock. She wrote about it like it was a wedding. And then came the part that made my mouth go dry. She explained that, to keep everything smooth, they needed help. Not just money, though, there was plenty of that too, but expertise. She wrote, Rachel, as you know, Mark is on a timeline. He needs your professional support. My professional support. I kept reading, my thumb scrolling slowly, like I was afraid the words might jump off the screen and grab me. She wanted me to handle the appraisal component for their refinance, free of charge. She wanted me to review the comps. She wanted me to draft a letter for the lender verifying the projected increase in value after renovations. And this part was bolded. She wanted me to sign an affidavit stating that all planned changes were fully compliant with local zoning and HOA requirements. I stared at the word affidavit. It sat there like a loaded weapon. Donna didn't use that word by accident. My mother wasn't dumb. She knew exactly what she was asking. Then I got to the next bullet point. You will also need to attend the HOA meeting next Thursday on Mark's behalf. They respect you because you're professional, and you'll be able to calm any concerns. I felt heat rise in my face. Calm any concerns. I could practically hear her voice, sweet and firm, the way she spoke to waiters and school secretaries and anyone else she wanted to control. There was no mention of Emily's recital. Not one sentence. Not even a casual, hope she enjoyed it. Nothing. Just demands. Wrapped in family language. At the bottom of the email, she'd attached a PDF labeled Renovation Plan and a calendar invite titled Family Work Weekend. Work weekend. They wanted me there to help physically, too. Painting, cleaning, setting up. Donna wrote, Jenna says you have a great eye. It would mean a lot if you handled the staging for the appraisal photos. I stood in the coffee shop, staring at my phone while people brushed past me to grab lids and sugar packets. My heart was beating too fast. My hands were cold. Because suddenly, the picture was clear. They didn't come to Emily's recital because it didn't serve them. But the moment they needed something from me, my skills, my signature, my credibility, they were reaching out like nothing had happened. Like my feelings didn't exist. Like Emily's disappointment was just background noise. I backed out of the email and looked at the time. 2:14 p.m. Emily would be getting out of school soon. I could already imagine her in the pickup line, violin case on her lap, talking about the fish tank restaurant, trying to keep her hopes small and manageable. I didn't want to bring this into her world. Not yet. I drove to the school and waited in line like usual, gripping the steering wheel so hard my wrists hurt. When Emily climbed in, she looked tired. Her hair had loosened from its ponytail, strands sticking to her forehead. Hi, she said, and then she noticed my face. Nothing, I said automatically, and then I hated myself for it. Emily watched me for a second, then looked away. Okay, she said softly, like she was giving me permission to lie. On the way home, she told me about a worksheet and how Ava had braided her hair at lunch. I made the right noises, but my mind kept snapping back to that email. Affidavit. HOA meeting. Work weekend. When we got home, Emily went to her room to do homework. I stood in the kitchen with my phone and opened the attached PDF. It was a set of renderings and a rough budget. The numbers made my stomach turn. Tens of thousands of dollars in materials. Contractors. Permits. Dock upgrade. Electrical. Structural reinforcement. And then, in the corner of one page, I noticed a tiny line of text. Existing deck footprint to remain non-conforming structure grandfathered. Non-conforming. My appraiser brain kicked in automatically, the way it always did when something didn't sit right. Non-conforming meant it didn't meet current rules, but was allowed to exist because it was built before the rules changed. It also meant you don't mess with it without risking everything, and they were planning to expand it. I scrolled through the PDF again, slower this time. There were measurements that didn't line up, notes in the margins that looked like they'd been copied and pasted from somewhere else. A highlighted section about setback requirements. I felt that cold, familiar feeling in my chest, the one that isn't fear exactly, but awareness. The awareness that you're standing on the edge of something bigger than you thought. I set my phone down on the counter and stared at the kitchen window over the sink. Outside, The late afternoon light made the neighborhood look soft and normal. A kid rode past on a bike. A dog barked once. Inside, my life felt like it was shifting under my feet. Because my mother wasn't just asking me to help. She was asking me to take responsibility for something I didn't control. She wanted my name on paper. She wanted my reputation behind their project. And she was doing it in the same breath she'd ignored my daughter's heartbreak. That night, after Emily went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and the PDF on the screen. I told myself I was just looking, just getting context, just being informed. But my fingers were already moving, clicking through county records and HOA documents, searching addresses, pulling up permit histories, the way I'd done 100 times for work. I wasn't trying to start a war. I was trying to understand what my family was really doing. And the more I looked, the more I realized I might be the only person in that whole mess who could stop it or expose it. By midnight, my laptop screen was the only bright thing in the kitchen. I sat at the table with a mug of tea that had gone cold, my hair twisted up in a messy knot, a legal pad beside me that I hadn't meant to start using. The house was quiet, but not the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the kind where every little sound, the fridge cycling on, the heat vent clicking, felt like it was happening inside my chest. I typed Mark's lake house address into the county auditor's website and pulled up the parcel card. Basic stuff first. Square footage, last sale price, property tax history. I'd done this for clients 1,000 times. It was muscle memory. The parcel card showed the house was classified as a single-family residence with a detached accessory structure. Nothing unusual. But when I clicked into the building permit history, the list was shorter than it should have been for a property Mark loved to brag about, renovating himself. One permit from the year they bought it. A plumbing permit. That was it. No deck permit. No electrical upgrade. No dock permit. Maybe they'd done everything above board and the county just hadn't digitized older records. That was possible. Some rural counties were behind. I didn't want to jump straight to suspicion. I told myself that as I opened a second tab and searched the HOA's public document portal, I had to enter the subdivision name, then scroll through a list of files, covenants, rules, meeting minutes, violation notices. It wasn't the kind of thing normal people read at midnight, but I wasn't normal in that moment. I was a mother trying to understand the game my family was playing. The meeting minutes from last summer had a section about shoreline setbacks and unpermitted modifications. My eyes snagged on a phrase. Lot 27, repeat concern regarding deck extension beyond approved footprint. Lot 27 was Mark's lot. I sat back in my chair. My mouth went dry again. I clicked the next month's minutes. Same section, same topic. Lot 27 owner advised to submit revised plans. No response. Then another. Lot 27 complaint received. Photographs requested. A slow, creeping nausea rolled through me. It wasn't just anger. It was the feeling of seeing a pattern you don't want to see because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Mark had done something out of bounds. The HOA knew. The county, maybe, didn't. And now, my mother wanted my signature on an affidavit saying everything was compliant. I looked back at the PDF Donna had sent. Existing deck footprint to remain, it said. Non-conforming structure, grandfathered. It was the kind of language people use when they're trying to sound legitimate, but the HOA minutes suggested the footprint hadn't remained the same. I zoomed in on the rendering and compared it to the measurements in the notes. Then I pulled up Mark's social media. Mark posted constantly. His life was a highlight reel. Lake sunsets, football Sundays, new grill, boat on the water, hard work pays off. Captions. I scrolled back through his photos, thumb moving fast, then slower, as I started taking screenshots. There were deck photos from last summer. A wide, newly stained platform with a rail that looked fresh, a hot tub in one corner, a string of Edison bulbs. In the background, the shoreline. I wasn't a surveyor, but I knew what setback lines looked like on a lot. I knew how close that deck seemed to the water. Too close. I pulled up older pictures from the year before they bought it, from the real estate listing still cached on a random site. The old deck was smaller, shorter, set farther back. Mark's deck was bigger now. Bigger than it used to be. I sat there with two images side by side, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, feeling my pulse in my throat. Then I noticed something else. In one of Mark's work weekend photos, there was a stack of lumber visible through the sliding glass door. On top of the stack sat a clipboard with a paper attached. I zoomed in, expecting nothing. The resolution was grainy, but I could make out the top line. My stomach dropped so hard it felt physical. A stop work order means someone official had already told them to stop. It means they'd crossed a line big enough for enforcement to step in. Mark had posted the photo like it was a joke, like it was a badge of honor. The caption read something like, "The county doesn't know what they're missing. We'll make it work." And my mother wanted me to sign a document saying everything was fine. I sat in the dark kitchen, staring at that zoomed-in screenshot, and I felt something in me shift. It was like the last soft layer of hope melted away. Hope that this was a misunderstanding. Hope that my family was careless but not malicious. Hope that they didn't know what they were asking. They knew. They were counting on me to clean it up. I minimized the tabs and opened a folder on my desktop labeled Client Work, then stopped. I wasn't working for a client. I was working for my own survival, so I made a new folder and named it simply Mark Lake House. I saved everything: HOA minutes, parcel card, screenshots of Mark's posts, the stop work order photo, the PDF Donna had sent. I kept my cursor steady, my breathing even, like I was handling evidence at a crime scene. That sounds dramatic, but that's how it felt. My mother had always operated like she could rewrite reality if she spoke confidently enough. Documents didn't care about confidence. Around 1:15 a.m., I heard floorboards creak. I froze. The hallway light clicked on, dim and yellow. Emily's shadow appeared at the kitchen doorway. "Mom?" she whispered, rubbing her eyes. Her hair was a mess, and she held her stuffed rabbit against her chest. "Why are you awake?" I quickly closed the laptop halfway. Not because I was hiding something from her, but because I didn't want her to see my face. "I couldn't sleep," I said. "Go back to bed, honey." Emily padded into the kitchen anyway. She looked at the cold tea and the legal pad and the half-closed laptop like she was taking inventory. "Are you working?" she asked. "Kind of," I said. She stepped closer. "Is it about Grandma?" The fact that she asked that without hesitation made my throat ache. Kids notice everything. They don't always have the words, but they feel the shape of things. "It's about family stuff," I said carefully. Emily stared at me for a moment, then said, "You look like you did when I got sick in second grade." I swallowed. "I'm okay." She didn't look convinced. She climbed into the chair next to mine, still holding the rabbit. Her feet didn't reach the floor. She rested her chin on the table. "Are we still doing fish tank dinner Friday?" she asked. "Yes," I said immediately. "Absolutely." She nodded slowly, and her eyes drooped like she was trying to stay awake just to make sure I meant it. After a minute, she whispered, "Do you think Grandma didn't come because she doesn't like me?" My chest tightened so hard I almost couldn't breathe. "No," I said, and my voice came out sharper than I meant. I forced it softer. "No, Emily. Grandma's choices are about Grandma, not you." Emily's eyes were glossy again, but she blinked like she was holding it back. "Sometimes, I think if I didn't do violin, then maybe she would come to other things." I reached for her hand. Her fingers were warm this time, small and trusting. "Don't change what you love for someone who doesn't show up," I said. "That's not how love works." Emily stared at the table for a second, then nodded. "Okay." She slid off the chair and walked back toward the hallway. At the doorway, she paused and turned around. "Mom?" she said. "Yeah?" "If Grandma wants you to do something," Emily said slowly, choosing each word like she was stepping on stones across water, "you don't have to." "Hasid." I stared at her. "What makes you say that?" She shrugged. But it was that older kind of shrug. The one kids do when they're acting like they're fine. Because you always do. And then you get quiet. Then she turned and walked back to bed. I sat there for a long time after she left, my hand still resting on the table where hers had been. My daughter had just pointed out something I didn't want to admit. I always did what my family asked. Not because it was right. Because it was easier than fighting. I opened the laptop again and stared at the folder of saved files. It felt heavy, like a brick on my chest. In the morning, I had to be up at 6. I had an inspection across town. Emily had school. Life didn't pause just because my family was pulling me into their mess. But once you see a stop work order sitting on top of your brother's lumber stack, once you see HOA minutes naming his lot over and over, You can't pretend you don't know. And once your 10-year-old tells you, in the calmest voice, that you don't have to do what grandma wants, it becomes impossible to keep your old role without feeling ashamed. I didn't sleep much that night. By the time my alarm went off, my eyes felt gritty and my body felt heavy, but my mind was clear in a way it hadn't been in years. My mother wasn't just ignoring Emily, she was using me. And if I signed what she wanted, it wouldn't just be unfair. It would be dangerous. For my career, for my finances, for the stability Emily depended on. I got out of bed, made coffee, packed Emily's lunch, and moved through the morning like I was carrying a secret. Because I was. I had proof that Mark's lake house project wasn't clean, and I knew exactly what my mother would do if I refused to help. She would punish me. She always did. The only difference now was that I wasn't a scared kid trying to be useful. I was a mother who had finally learned the cost of staying quiet. By Wednesday afternoon, the email had turned into a flood. Donna didn't call. She emailed because emails looked cleaner. Emails left a trail that could be twisted later into, I was just trying to communicate. Emails made her feel in control. The first follow-up came at 9:06 a.m. with the subject line, Urgent, need confirmation, today. She wrote that Mark was meeting with the contractor Friday and needed your letter for the lender before then. She added a little smiley face at the end of one sentence. Like that made it friendly. The second came at 11:42 a.m. with don't make this harder than it has to be. The third came at 3:17 p.m. with call me in all caps. I didn't answer any of them. At work, I moved through inspections on autopilot. I measured rooms and took photos and nodded politely at homeowners, explaining why their kitchen backsplash should add at least 20 grand. I smiled and said, I'll note it, while my mind kept looping on the word affidavit and the stop work order in Mark's photo. I wasn't just angry. I was cornered. If I complied, I put my license and my livelihood at risk. If I refused, Donna would make sure I paid in another way. She couldn't hit me anymore or ground me, so she used shame and gossip and the rest of the family like weapons. Around 4, I picked Emily up from school. She climbed into the car with her violin case, and her backpack, and a piece of paper folded into a tiny square. What's that? I asked, glancing at the paper. My audition list, she said, without looking at me. I felt a jolt. She shrugged, but her voice was quieter than usual. Maybe. That's great, I said, trying not to sound like I was begging the moment to stay. What changed your mind? Emily stared out the window as we pulled away from the curb. Miss, Keller said, I don't have to audition for other people. She said, I can audition for me. My throat tightened. She's right. Emily nodded once. Then she said, Ava's mom is coming to the auditions. Ava said her parents always come even when she messes up. The sentence landed like a weight. Not because it was cruel, but because it was simple. Emily was noticing what showing up looked like. She was measuring love by attendance. When we got home, she went to her room to practice. Not long. Just 10 minutes. But I heard the sound of her bow moving, the notes steady, and I felt something like relief. Not happiness. Relief. Like a door cracking open after being shut too long. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop again, but this time, I wasn't hunting. I already had enough. I was thinking, there were a lot of ways I could handle my mother's request, and every one of them had consequences. I could ignore it completely. That would buy me a day or two before she escalated. She'd show up at my house. She'd call Emily's school pretending she was concerned. She'd tell Mark I was unstable. She'd stir the family pot until someone knocked on my door with that tight, fake sympathetic smile. I could tell her I couldn't afford to help. But Donna would laugh at that. She'd say, we all have budgets. And then she'd offer to loan me the money so I'd owe her. Or she'd tell the family I was jealous because Mark had more. I could tell her I wasn't comfortable signing anything. That was the truth. But truth had never stopped Donna from pushing. She would call it overreacting and being dramatic and trying to punish the family. She'd say, if you loved your brother, you would. I could confront Mark directly. But Mark didn't see himself as someone who did wrong. He saw himself as someone who got things done. He'd shrug and tell me everyone cuts corners. He'd say it with that confident half-smile that made you feel like you were the weird one for caring. And then there was the choice I kept circling back to, the one that made my stomach twist. I could expose it. Not publicly in some messy emotional way. Not by screaming on Facebook or calling his contractor. I could expose it the clean way, the way the system works. Documentation, compliance, reports. But that choice scared me too. Because the moment I did it, I'd become the villain in their story forever. Donna would never forgive it. Mark would never forgive it. And part of me still had that old, childish hope that if I did enough, if I behaved perfectly, my family would finally treat me like I mattered. That hope was stupid, but it was real. I thought about Emily's face in the auditorium. I thought about her drawing of the empty chairs. I thought about her telling me I didn't have to do what Grandma wanted. A knock on the front door made me jump. I looked at the clock. 6:12 p.m. Too early for pizza delivery. Too late for anyone normal to stop by. I stood up slowly and walked to the door. Donna stood on my porch holding a plastic grocery bag. My heart started hammering. She looked put together, of course. Hair done, lipstick, long coat. She held herself like she was doing me a favor just by existing near my home. I didn't open the door immediately. I didn't know why. Maybe I wanted 1 second of control. She knocked again, harder. "Rachel," she called through the door, her voice bright and annoyed at the same time. Emily's violin stopped upstairs. A moment later, I heard her bedroom door crack open. Soft footsteps on the landing. I opened the door just enough to step outside and close it behind me, blocking Donna's view into the house. "Hi," I said, keeping my voice even. Donna lifted the bag like she was presenting evidence. "I brought dinner. I'm not here to fight." The bag smelled like rotisserie chicken and mashed potatoes from the grocery deli. Her favorite kind of manipulation? Kindness she could point to later as proof she wasn't the bad guy. "I didn't ask you to bring anything," I said. "Well, you weren't answering," she replied, as if that justified showing up uninvited. "And Mark needs an answer." I crossed my arms, the cold air biting my wrists. "This isn't a good time." Donna's eyes narrowed slightly. "Is Emily home?" "She's practicing," I said. Donna brightened instantly, as if this was good news she could use. "Oh, good. Tell her. Grandma says hi." "I'll come in and say hello." "No," I said, and the word came out sharper than I expected. Donna blinked. "Excuse me? She's in the middle of something," I said, "and I don't want her distracted." To app's life. Donna's smile tightened. "Rachel, don't do that. Don't use Emily as a shield. We're family." That word. Family. The way she used it, like a key that unlocked my boundaries. I held my ground. My heart was pounding, but my feet stayed planted. "You can't just show up and expect access." Donna's face hardened. "I can when my daughter won't return a call." "You didn't come to her recital," I said. Low. Donna rolled her eyes. "We're still on this?" I felt heat rise in my neck. "Yes, we are." End quote. She sighed dramatically and stepped closer. "Rachel, that was a quiet little school thing. It wasn't the end of the world. Mark had a rough week. Liam had practice. We needed a break. You promised," I said. Donna waved a hand. "And you're making it into a moral crisis, like always." I almost laughed, because she was standing on my porch asking me to sign an affidavit for a project that had a stop work order attached to it. And she was calling me dramatic. "About the lake house," I said, forcing myself back to the point. "I'm not signing anything. I'm not writing a letter for the lender. And I'm not going to the HOA meeting." Donna's eyes flashed. "I'm serious." "Why?" she demanded. "Because you're mad about the recital? You're going to punish your brother because you're holding a grudge?" "It's not a grudge," I said. My voice was shaking now, but I kept it controlled. "It's my job. My license. You're asking me to attach my name to something I can't verify." Donna tilted her head. "You can verify it. That's why Mark wants you. Because you know how to make things look right." The honesty of that made my stomach drop. She didn't even try to pretend it was about family support. She said it out loud. "Make things look right." I stared at her. "You want me to lie?" Donna's expression turned cold. "Don't be dramatic. It's paperwork. Paperwork can ruin me," I said. She stepped closer again, lowering her voice like she was giving me advice. "Rachel, you've always been so uptight. You think the world runs on rules. It runs on relationships. Mark takes care of us. That lake house is going to be a place for family. You want to be part of that or not?" I thought about Emily upstairs, practicing behind a closed door. Donna followed my gaze toward the window. "And if you keep acting like this," she said quietly, "people are going to start asking why. They'll wonder what's wrong with you." There it was. The threat wrapped in concern. I felt my hands clench into fists. I forced them open. "Leave the food," I said. "And go." Donna's face twisted in disbelief. "You're throwing me out?" "Yes." She stared at me for a long moment, then her mouth curled into something ugly. "Fine. But don't act shocked when this comes back on you. You can't cut yourself off from family and expect everything to stay the same." I didn't respond. I just stood there, breathing through my nose, waiting. Donna set the bag down on the porch like she was placing a bomb, then turned and walked to her car. Before she got in, she looked back. "You have until tomorrow," she said. "Mark needs your signature. And if you don't do the right thing, Rachel, I swear I will handle it." Then she drove away. I stayed on the porch long after her taillights disappeared. My skin was cold. My heart was still racing. Inside, the house was quiet again except for the faint sound of Emily's violin starting up, hesitant at first, then steadier. I went back inside and locked the door. And in that moment, I knew Donna wasn't going to let this go quietly. She'd warned me. She'd always handled things her way by force, by pressure, by turning people against you until you broke. But this time I had something I'd never had before. I had documentation. And I had a reason bigger than fear. Because if I gave in now, Emily would learn that when someone threatens you, you fold. When someone demands you cover their mess, you sign your name and call it love. I sat at the kitchen table again, opened my laptop, and stared at the folder of saved files. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for a way to stop being used. And I could feel the ground shifting, like the first crack running through ice. On Thursday morning, I woke up with the kind of calm that only shows up after you've already made a decision. The fear was still there, sitting low in my stomach. But it wasn't running the show anymore. I moved through the morning like I had a checklist. Make coffee, pack Emily's lunch, sign her permission slip for a field trip, kiss her forehead, remind her we were still doing fish tank dinner Friday. She nodded and said okay. And for the first time in days, her voice sounded like itself. After I dropped her off, I sat in the parking lot for a minute and stared at my phone. Donna had given me until tomorrow. That meant she wanted me panicked, scrambling, calling, begging for a compromise. I wasn't going to give her that. I opened my email, found her message, and hit reply. I kept it short. "Mom, I won't be providing appraisal services, letters, or any signed statements related to Mark's lake house. Please do not list my name on any documents. Please communicate with me in writing going forward. Rachel." I read it 3 times before sending it. No insults. No mention of the recital. No emotional language she could twist into, "Rachel is unstable." Just a clear boundary. Then, because I knew Donna, I did one more thing. I opened my payment app and sent her $5. In the memo line, I typed, "For the memories." That was it. $5. Not dramatic, not hateful. Just a symbolic refusal to play the role she'd assigned me. I knew she'd understand the message. She understood money and optics better than anything. My hands shook a little as I hit send. Not because I regretted it, but because I knew what it would trigger. I drove to my first inspection and forced myself to focus on the work. A small brick house with a finished basement, the kind of place that smelled like cinnamon air freshener. The homeowner walked me through each room, talking fast about upgrades, new countertops, new fixtures. We did it ourselves. I nodded and wrote notes, measuring tape, snapping open and shut, the sound sharp in the quiet rooms. By the time I got back to my car, my phone had 14 missed calls. All from Donna. I didn't listen to any voicemails. I didn't need to. I could hear her without pressing play. I drove to my second appointment, then my third. I kept my phone face down in the cup holder like it was a live thing. At lunch, I ate a granola bar in the car and checked my email. There were 3 new messages. The first was from Donna. The second was from Mark. "Call me." The third was from Jenna. "Can you please just talk to him? He's really stressed." I stared at Jenna's message for a long time. Jenna was the type of person who thought being reasonable meant smoothing things over no matter who was bleeding. She wore calm like a badge. She never took a side publicly. She just nudged you toward the outcome that made the loudest person happiest. I didn't reply. At 2:07 p.m., a new email hit my inbox. Subject line: You are jeopardizing this family. Donna again. This time, she didn't bother with bullet points. It was pure anger disguised as righteousness. She wrote that Mark had done so much for me over the years, that I was ungrateful, that my little stunt with $5 was humiliating, that I was creating unnecessary drama and hurting Emily by cutting her off from people who love her. Love her. I felt something cold settle in my chest. There was one line near the bottom that made my skin prickle. If you refuse to cooperate, we will have to take steps to protect what's best for everyone, including your daughter. I read it again. Protect what's best for everyone. Donna didn't say things like that by accident. She wanted me to picture custody. She wanted me to picture a judge. She wanted me to picture Emily being pulled into some ugly adult mess because I wouldn't sign an affidavit. I put my phone down and sat in my car with both hands on the steering wheel, breathing through my nose. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I opened my notes app and typed the exact time and wording of that line. Then, I took a screenshot of the email and saved it into the folder. Documentation, like the officers in my imagination would tell me later. Keep records. After work, I picked Emily up. She climbed into the car and immediately started talking about her day, which made my throat tighten with relief. She told me Ava had gotten in trouble for whispering during math. She told me Miss Keller had complimented her bow hold. She told me there was a new kid in class who smelled like pickles. Then she paused and looked at me. Did Grandma come by again? She asked. I kept my eyes on the road. No. Emily nodded slowly. Okay. How do you feel about Grandma right now? I asked carefully. Emily shrugged. I don't know. I feel weird. Weird how? I asked. She picked at the strap of her backpack. Like I don't want to hate her, but I also don't want to keep hoping. The words hit me hard. 10 years old, and she was already learning how to reduce her expectations to survive. I pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine. I looked at her. You don't have to hate anyone, I said, but you also don't have to keep giving people chances when they keep hurting you. Emily looked down. Is that what you're doing? Yes, I said, and my voice stayed steady. I'm making sure our lives don't revolve around people who don't treat us with respect. Emily didn't smile, but her shoulders loosened a fraction. Okay, she said again, and this time it sounded like agreement, not resignation. That night, while Emily did homework at the table, I opened my laptop and searched the county website again. I didn't need more proof to justify my decision, but I needed to know how far Mark had gone, how many corners he'd cut, how much danger he'd dragged toward me. I pulled up the zoning code for shoreline structures. I pulled up the permit application process. I read the HOA covenant section on docks and setbacks. It was dry, boring text, the kind of thing people ignore until it ruins their weekend. I found a line in the HOA rules that made my eyebrows lift. Any non-conforming structure altered beyond routine maintenance must be brought into full compliance. In other words, if Mark touched that deck beyond minor repairs, the whole thing could become illegal. The grandfathered excuse would evaporate. And then I remembered the hot tub. Hot tubs weren't routine maintenance. I clicked through more documents and found an HOA violation notice template. There was a reference to fines, enforcement, and something called a lien process. A lien. That word sat in my brain like a stone. If Mark's property ended up with a lien, it could impact his refinancing. It could wreck his timeline. It could cost him real money. Donna wanted my signature because she wanted to outrun consequences. I sat back in my chair and stared at the ceiling for a long moment. I could hear Emily's pencil scratching at her homework. The smell of laundry detergent drifted from the clean clothes folded on the couch. I thought about what my mother had threatened. Steps to protect what's best for everyone, including your daughter. I knew what was coming next. If she couldn't bully me into compliance, she would try to scare me into it. She'd involve someone official. She'd call someone with a badge or a title. She'd claim I was unstable, overwhelmed, unfit. She'd make it sound like concern. Because the scariest people don't threaten you with fists. They threaten you with systems. At 9:30 p.m., after Emily went to bed, my phone buzzed again. You're really going to do this? Over a kid's recital? Stop acting like a victim. We need you. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. He still thought this was about a recital. Or maybe he pretended to think that because it made him feel justified. I typed back one sentence. Don't contact me unless it's in writing and respectful. Then I blocked his number. My hands trembled afterward, but not with fear. With a strange kind of relief. I blocked Donna next. The silence that followed was immediate, almost unnatural. No buzzing, no ringing, no new emails, at least not right away. Just the quiet of my house and the sound of my own breathing. I knew it wouldn't last. Donna would find another way through. She always did. But as I sat there in the dark living room, I realized something else too. For the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. And somewhere in my chest, underneath the fear and anger, a harder, steadier feeling was forming, something I hadn't felt since I was a kid. A sense that I could protect us. That I could stop being the person who cleaned up other people's messes while they laughed at the bar. Because if Donna and Mark wanted to play dirty, they were going to find out I wasn't powerless anymore. I had the records. I had the screenshots. And I had time. Enough time for the truth to catch up to them. The next morning, the silence broke in the most predictable way possible. At 8:13 a.m. My doorbell rang. I was in the kitchen packing Emily's lunch, the smell of peanut butter and apples filling the air. Emily sat at the table tying her shoes, her violin case propped against the wall like it always was on school days. The bell was sharp and impatient, not the gentle tap of a neighbor. I froze with the sandwich bag in my hand. Emily looked up. "Who is it?" "I don't know," I said, already knowing. The bell rang again, longer this time. Then a knock. Hard enough to rattle the door. I walked to the entryway and looked through the peephole. Mark stood on my porch. He wasn't alone. Jenna was beside him, arms crossed, lips pressed tight. Behind them, my mother's car was parked at the curb. My heart started pounding so loud I felt it in my ears. I glanced at the clock. Emily's school started in 40 minutes. They knew exactly when to come, when I'd be busy, when I'd be vulnerable, when my child would be home to hear it. I didn't open the door. Mark knocked again. "Rachel, open up!" Emily had stood up quietly behind me, her backpack on. I turned and put a hand out, palm down, signaling her to stay back. "Go upstairs," I whispered. "Get your shoes on fully and wait in your room." Emily's eyes widened. "Why?" "Just do it," I said, keeping my voice calm even as my stomach flipped. She hesitated, then nodded and moved up the stairs quickly, her footsteps soft but fast. I took a breath and opened the door only as far as the chain would allow. The cold air rushed in. Mark's face filled the gap. He looked angry, like I'd stolen something from him. Jenna stood slightly behind, watching me like I was a problem she needed to manage. "What are you doing?" Mark snapped. "Blocking us? Are you serious? Don't come to my house," I said, my voice low. "Not like this. Just create." Jenna forced a tight smile. "You can talk in writing," I said. Mark scoffed. "Oh my God, you're acting like we're strangers." I looked past them to my mother's car. Donna sat inside, visible through the windshield, sunglasses on even though it was cloudy. She didn't get out. Of course she didn't. She wanted Mark to do the confrontation while she stayed clean. Mark stepped closer, and the chain went taut. "You think you can just block everyone and hide? You're messing with my loan. The bank needs that letter. You should talk to your lender," I said. "I'm not part of this." Jenna's voice sharpened. "You are part of it. Donna told us you agreed to help." I stared at her. "Donna doesn't get to volunteer my license." Mark's jaw clenched. "It's a letter, Rachel. It's not a felony. Stop being so dramatic." My hands shook, but I kept them on the door edge. I saw the HOA minutes. "It's creased." Mark's eyes flickered. The smallest reaction, but it was there. Jenna's expression changed too, just for a second. Then she recovered. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about Lot 27, I said. The words steady. "I'm talking about the deck extension and the shoreline setback complaints. I'm talking about the stop work order you posted like it was funny." Mark's face flushed. "That was nothing." "It wasn't nothing," I said. "And I'm not signing anything that ties me to it. Together." Mark's voice rose. "You're doing this because you're mad about Emily's recital." The way he said it, Emily's recital, like it was a silly little hobby, like it didn't matter, made something hot flare in me. "I'm doing this because you're asking me to lie," I said. "And because you didn't show up for my kid and then you show up at my door demanding I save you." Jenna stepped forward, eyes narrowed. This isn't about the recital. This is about you being bitter. You've always had this thing where you think everyone's out to get you. I almost laughed at the absurdity. The script was so familiar. Deny, minimize, blame me for reacting. Mark leaned closer to the gap in the door. You're going to regret this, he said. Mom is losing her mind. She's worried. Emily needs family. And you're cutting her off. Because you're jealous. Jealous of what? I asked, and my voice stayed calm, which seemed to make him angrier. Mark's eyes flashed. Jealous that I have something nice. That I built a life. That people actually want to be around me. I stared at him for a beat, then said quietly, You didn't build it. You just take. That hit him. His face tightened. Jenna put a hand on his arm like she was trying to keep him from lunging. Rachel, please, she said, switching back to the fake soothing tone. We're not here to fight. We're here to solve this. Solve it how? I asked. By me signing a document I don't believe is true? Jenna's smile disappeared. By you, acting like a sister. I felt the chain dig into the doorframe as Mark pressed closer. Open the door, he hissed. Let's talk like adults. No, I said. Mark's nostrils flared. Fine. Then don't be shocked when someone else gets involved. I held his gaze. Who? He didn't answer. He stepped back, staring at me like he was memorizing my face. Jenna's eyes flicked toward the upstairs window. Is Emily home? My stomach turned. Don't. She lifted her hands as if innocent. I'm just asking. You don't get to show up here and involve my kid, I said. Mark laughed, harsh. You already involved her. You're the one feeding her your drama. I shut my eyes for half a second, feeling my pulse pounding behind them. Mark stared at me, then turned toward the car. He marched down the steps, Jenna following, and they walked to Donna's car. Donna rolled down her window just enough to speak. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw her lips moving fast, sharp, like she was giving instructions. Mark turned back toward my porch and called out, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. You're making a big mistake, Rachel. Then, they got in their cars and drove away. I closed the door and slid the deadbolt shut, my hands trembling. For a second, I leaned my forehead against the wood and tried to breathe. Upstairs, Emily's bedroom door creaked. Soft footsteps on the landing. Mom? She whispered. Stay up there, I called back, forcing my voice steady. I'm coming. I walked up the stairs, my legs heavy. Emily stood in her doorway, backpack on, violin case still downstairs. Her eyes were wide. Was that Uncle Mark? Yes, I said. Was he mad? She asked, and her voice did that small tremble she tried to hide. I knelt in front of her. He's mad about adult stuff. Not about you. 8. Emily swallowed. I heard him say my name. My throat tightened. I know. She stared at me for a long moment, then asked the question I'd been dreading. Did Grandma tell him about the recital? She knows about it, I said carefully. Emily's face shifted into something like resignation. So she knows, and she's still. I cut her off gently. Emily, listen to me. What Grandma does is not because of you. It's because of Grandma. Emily's eyes filled, but she didn't let the tears fall. She nodded hard, like she was trying to push the feelings back down. I stood up. Get your coat. We're going to school. Downstairs. As I grabbed Emily's violin case, my phone buzzed from the counter. It was a notification from my email app. A new message. The subject line made my stomach drop. Request for welfare check? Urgent. I opened it with shaking fingers. It wasn't from the police. It wasn't official. It was from my apartment complex management company, except I didn't live in an apartment complex. I lived in a rented house. The email was sent to my work address, not my personal one. The message said that someone had contacted community services, claiming there were concerns about my well-being and my ability to care for my child. They were reaching out to verify my address and ensure safety. My vision blurred for a second. I gripped the counter to steady myself. Donna hadn't even waited a day. She was already pulling levers. Emily stood by the door, coat on, watching me. What is it? Nothing, I said too fast, then caught myself. I took a breath. It's just, Grandma is trying to cause trouble. Emily's face went pale. Can she do that? Not if we're okay, I said, and I forced myself to sound sure. And we are okay. But inside, my fear spiked, because I knew how this game worked. Donna couldn't make me sign an affidavit, so she would make me afraid. She would imply I was unstable. She would tell people I was spiraling. She would try to put me in a position where I had to defend my own sanity to strangers. And the worst part was that it didn't have to be true to be damaging. I drove Emily to school with my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. She was quiet in the passenger seat, staring at her hands. When we pulled up, she hesitated before opening the door. "Mom," she said softly. "Yeah? Are we still doing fish tank dinner?" she asked. And it broke my heart because she was asking if our little promise was still real in the middle of all this. "Yes," I said firmly. "No matter what, Friday is ours." Emily nodded and climbed out. I watched her walk into the building, small against the big glass doors, and I felt a surge of anger so sharp it steadied me. Donna had crossed a line. She wasn't just pressuring me anymore. She was threatening the safety of my home life. She was making moves that could pull my child into her control. On the drive to work, I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't call anyone. I just drove and thought. By the time I parked outside my office, I knew I couldn't keep handling this like a normal family conflict. Normal families didn't show up at your door and then file concerns about your parenting when you said no. I went inside, closed my office door, and opened my folder. I printed everything. The HOA minutes. The stop work order screenshot. Donna's email with the line about protecting what's best. Mark's messages. The PDF. I put it into a binder like I was building a case, because that's what Donna had turned it into. At noon, my phone buzzed again with a voicemail from an unknown number. I listened once, then again. A calm professional voice said, "Hi, this is Miss Harlan with Family Services. We received a report and need to schedule a visit." My hands went cold. Donna had done it. She'd brought the system to my door. And now, there was no way forward that didn't end in something breaking. I didn't call Donna back. I didn't call Mark. I didn't call Jenna. The moment I heard Family Services, I knew any contact with them would be used as fuel. If I sounded angry, I was unstable. If I sounded scared, I was overwhelmed. If I sounded calm, I was cold and calculating. There was no version of me on the phone that wouldn't be edited in their story later. So I did the only thing I could do. I got organized. I called Emily's school first and told the front office that only I was authorized to pick her up and that no one else, including family members, had permission. The woman on the phone sounded sympathetic without asking questions, like she'd heard similar requests before. She asked if there was a custody order. I told her I had full custody and could provide paperwork if needed. She said, "We'll note it," and that was that. Then I called my boss. His name is Greg, and he's the kind of supervisor who cares about output and liability. He isn't warm, but he's fair. And right then, I needed fair. I closed my office door and told him I had a family situation that might involve a wellness check or contact from social services. There was a pause on the line. "Are you okay?" he asked, cautious. "Yes," I said. "But someone is trying to cause trouble because I refuse to participate in something unethical. I'm documenting it. I want you to hear it from me first." Greg exhaled slowly. "Okay, keep me posted, and keep everything in writing." "I am," I said. After I hung up, I sat at my desk and stared at the binder in front of me. My stomach still felt tight, but the fear had changed shape. It was sharper now, more focused. Donna had always relied on chaos on my panic, my confusion, my need to explain myself. I wasn't going to give her chaos. At 2:30 p.m., Miss Harlan called again. I let it go to voicemail and listened right away. This time, she left a date and time. Friday at 10 a.m. She said it like it was routine, like she was scheduling a dentist appointment. She asked me to have my child present, and she reminded me they could coordinate with law enforcement if necessary. I felt my hands go numb. Friday morning, the day I'd promised Emily we'd do fish tank dinner. The day I'd been holding on to as proof that our life was still ours. Donna had timed it. Of course she had. I called a family law attorney that afternoon. I found her number through a local referral list and left a message. Then sent an email summarizing the situation in simple terms. I attached screenshots. I kept it factual. I didn't use emotional language. I didn't mention the recital, even though it sat like a stone in the middle of everything. I wrote about harassment, intimidation, and threats to involve services. I wrote about the pressure to sign an affidavit. Then I did something I hadn't planned on doing at all. I made a report. Not a dramatic one. Not a revenge-filled one. A clean one. I opened the county's online code enforcement portal. It was a boring government website with clunky menus and a long form. I filled it out the way I filled out work forms, carefully, accurately. I entered the property address. I selected the category for potential unpermitted construction and shoreline setback concerns. I wrote a short description and attached the HOA meeting minutes that referenced Lot 27. I attached the screenshot of Mark's own post showing a stop work order, cropped to show the address in the background from another angle. I attached the renovation PDF Donna had sent, the one claiming the deck footprint would remain, because it looked like a deliberate misrepresentation. When I reached the end, the website asked me if I wanted to submit anonymously. I checked yes. My finger hovered over the submit button for a long second. I wasn't doing this because I wanted Mark punished. I wasn't doing it because I wanted Donna embarrassed. I was doing it because they were trying to pull me into their mess and then threaten my ability to parent when I refused. They wanted to make me afraid of consequences. So I let consequences come to them instead. I clicked submit. The page refreshed and displayed a confirmation number. My heart was pounding, but it wasn't panic. It was something else, like standing up after being shoved down for years. That evening, I picked Emily up from school and kept my face neutral. She climbed into the car and asked if we could stop for a smoothie, and I said yes. We sat in a small shop with sticky tables, and she talked about orchestra and Ava and her upcoming audition like nothing was wrong. But she kept glancing at my face, like she was checking for cracks. On the drive home, she asked, "Are we in trouble?" I kept my eyes on the road. "No, honey. But Uncle Mark was mad," she said. "He's mad," I said, choosing my words carefully, because I said no to something I shouldn't do. Emily frowned. "Like cheating?" "Kind of," I said. "Like signing my name on something that isn't true." Emily thought about that. "Miss Keller says your name is like a promise," she said. "Like when you write it on your music." I swallowed. "She's right. Mine is." Emily nodded slowly. "So, you said no?" "Yes," I said. And I would say no again. That night, after she went to bed, I sat on the couch with my laptop and refreshed my email every few minutes like a person waiting for test results. Nothing came at first. Then, at 9:41 p.m., a message hit my inbox from an address I didn't recognize. It was from Donna. Not blocked. She'd created a new email account. Subject line: "Last chance." The message was short and cold. "Mark has decided to move forward without you, but your behavior has raised serious concerns. Family Services will be contacting you. You have brought this on yourself. If you want this to stop, you know what to do." I read it twice and felt my hands start shaking again. Not because of the threat itself, but because of the clarity. Donna was saying it outright. Comply and the pressure stops. Resist, and she uses the system. I forwarded the email to my new attorney email thread, then saved it into the folder. Then I did something I never would have done a month ago. I changed the locks. The house wasn't mine. I rented it. But my lease allowed changes as long as I provided a copy of the key to the landlord. Donna had a key. She'd had one for years, just in case. I used to think it was practical. Now it felt like a hand around my throat. The locksmith came the next morning while Emily was at school. He was a tired man with rough hands who didn't ask questions. He changed the front deadbolt and the back door lock in 20 minutes and handed me 2 new keys. The sound of the old lock clicking out of place made my shoulders drop in a way I didn't expect. That afternoon, Miss Harland from Family Services called again. I answered this time because running from it wouldn't help. "Hi, Miss Harland," I said, keeping my voice calm. She sounded polite and professional. "Thank you for calling back. We need to schedule a home visit regarding a report we received." "I understand," I said. "Can you tell me what the report alleges?" She hesitated, then said, "Concerns about mental health and neglect. The reporter stated you've been acting erratically, isolating your child from family support, and may be overwhelmed." I closed my eyes for a second, forcing myself to breathe. Erratically. Isolating. Overwhelmed. Donna's favorite words. "Okay," I said. "We can meet. But I want to be clear. My child is safe, cared for, and thriving. I'm fully employed. I have full custody, and I have documentation of harassment from the family member who made the report." There was a pause, and her tone shifted slightly more alert. You have documentation? Yes, I said. Emails and messages in which my mother threatens to involve services because I refuse to sign an unethical affidavit related to a property matter. Another pause. All right, she said carefully. We will still need to do a visit, but you can provide that documentation when we meet. Friday at 10 works, I said, because it was already set. And my daughter will be present. Thank you, she said. We'll see you then. When I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the new keys. Friday at 10. Less than 48 hours away. I wanted to call Donna and scream. I wanted to call Mark and tell him he was a coward. I wanted to post everything online and let everyone see what kind of people they were. Instead, I did what I'd been doing since the night of the recital. I kept building my case. I printed my custody papers. I printed Emily's school attendance record. I printed her vaccination record. I printed my pay stubs. I cleaned the house thoroughly, not because it was dirty, but because I refused to give Donna even one cracked baseboard to point at. I took photos of Emily's room, her stocked pantry, her refrigerator. I saved receipts for groceries. I wrote down dates and times. It felt humiliating, having to prepare to prove I was a decent mother because my own mother had decided to weaponize the system. But every time I felt humiliation, I looked at Emily's violin case by the stairs and reminded myself why I was doing it. Friday morning came faster than I wanted. At 9:52, Emily stood beside me in the living room, her hand in mine. She looked nervous but brave, chin lifted. A knock sounded at the door. Not hard like Mark's. Firm, professional, I opened it. Miss Harland stood on my porch holding a clipboard. Beside her was a uniformed police officer. Neutral expression, hands resting calmly at his belt. My mother had brought the world to my doorstep, and as I stepped aside to let them in, I realized something that made my blood run cold. Donna wasn't just trying to scare me into signing an affidavit. She was trying to take control of my life, and she didn't care what she did to Emily to get it. Miss Harland introduced herself again, like we hadn't spoken on the phone, and then introduced the officer as Officer Briggs. He nodded politely, eyes moving over the porch and the entryway the way someone does when they're trained to notice everything without looking like they're noticing. Thank you for letting us in, Miss Harland said. Her voice was even, professional, not cold, but not warm either. This is a standard visit. We're here to ensure the child is safe and that the home environment is appropriate. I understand, I said, stepping back. Please come in. Emily stood at the edge of the living room, shoulders tight, hands clasped in front of her. She wore her school hoodie and leggings, hair pulled back neatly, like she was bracing for a test. My heart clenched at the sight of it. No kid should have to stand in her own house waiting to be evaluated. Miss Harland glanced at Emily and offered a small smile. Hi, Emily. I'm Miss Harland. This might feel a little strange, but we're just going to ask some questions, okay? Emily nodded without speaking. Officer Briggs stayed near the doorway, not looming, but present. A reminder that Donna had put a uniform into my living room. Would it be all right if we sat at the table? Miss Harland asked. Yes, I said, and I gestured toward the kitchen. I also have documentation ready. Est. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. All right. We sat at the kitchen table. Emily sat beside me. I could feel the heat of her small hand on my arm. I kept my posture steady, my breathing slow. I opened the binder I'd made and set it on the table like a file. Miss Harland began with routine questions. My full name, my date of birth, my address, my employment, Emily's school, who lived in the home, whether there were any firearms, whether there was a history of domestic violence, whether Emily had access to food, clothing, medical care. I answered calmly, one question at a time. I handed over copies of custody paperwork and pay stubs and Emily's school records when asked. Miss Harland made notes. Then she asked, Do you know who made the report? Yes, I said. Officer Briggs's eyes flicked toward me, alert. It was my mother, I said. Donna Reed. Miss Harland's pen paused. What makes you believe that? I slid a printed email across the table. The one from Donna's new account. The one that said Family Services would be contacting me and that I had brought it on myself. Miss Harland read it slowly. The muscles around her mouth tightened slightly. I slid the next page over. Donna's earlier email with the line about steps to protect what's best for everyone, including your daughter. Then I slid over Mark's text about me regretting this. Then the PDF asking for my signature on an affidavit. I watched Miss Harlan's face as she read. She didn't react dramatically, but I could tell the tone of the visit had shifted from routine check to, this is something else. What is the affidavit for? She asked. It's related to my brother's lake property renovation, I said. They wanted me to sign a statement about compliance. I refused. Why? She asked. Because I have reason to believe the renovation is not compliant, I said, and I kept my voice careful. And because signing something false could cost me my license and my job. Officer Briggs's posture changed slightly, more attentive now. Miss Harlan looked at me. Has there been any other conflict with your mother? Yes, I said. My throat tightened, but I kept going. She has shown up at my home uninvited. She has pressured me repeatedly. She has sent threats in writing. And she sent my brother to confront me at my door while my child was home. Miss Harlan glanced at Emily. Emily, is that true? Emily's fingers tightened around the sleeve of her hoodie. She nodded once. Uncle Mark came and he was loud. Officer Briggs asked gently. Did anyone touch you, Emily? Emily shook her head. No. Did anyone threaten you? Miss Harlan asked. Emily hesitated. Her eyes flicked to me. I didn't nod or shake my head. I just stayed still. Emily swallowed. They said my mom was making a mistake. Miss Harlan wrote something down. Then she said, Emily, would you be comfortable talking with me alone for a few minutes? In your room? Maybe? Emily's face went pale. Her eyes widened. My stomach tightened. I knew this was standard procedure, but knowing that didn't make it easier. I leaned toward Emily and spoke softly. It's okay. You just tell the truth. You're safe. Emily nodded slowly. Miss Harlan stood and followed Emily down the hallway. Officer Briggs stayed at the kitchen entrance, giving them space but staying within view. I sat at the table with the binder open and forced myself not to fidget. The minutes they were gone felt long. I listened to muffled voices down the hall, unable to make out words. My mind tried to fill the silence with worst-case scenarios. Donna's voice in my head. Rachel is unstable. Rachel is isolating her child. Rachel is overwhelmed. I looked around my kitchen. The clean counters, the packed pantry, Emily's artwork on the fridge, the small calendar with her school events written in blue ink. This was our life. Normal. Safe. Mine. Finally, Miss Harlan and Emily came back. Emily's face was tight, but she looked like she'd gotten through something hard. Miss Harlan sat down and took a breath. Based on what I've observed, she said, your home is appropriate. Emily appears well cared for, and there are no immediate safety concerns. My lungs released air I didn't realize I was holding. Officer Briggs nodded slightly, as if to confirm. Miss Harlan continued. However, the report itself and the documentation you've provided raise concerns about misuse of the reporting process. I can't make a legal determination, but I can note in my file that the report appears to be connected to a family dispute and potential coercion. My hands trembled under the table. I kept my voice steady. Thank you. Miss Harlan looked at me directly. Do you feel safe? I hesitated, because the honest answer was complicated. My home was safe. The people outside it were not. I feel threatened, I admitted. Not physically, but intimidated. Where? Officer Briggs spoke for the first time since the initial introductions. His voice was calm. Ma'am, if your family is harassing you or showing up uninvited, you can file a report. You can also consider a protection order if it escalates. I nodded. I'm speaking with an attorney. Good, he said. Miss Harlan closed her notebook. I'll be filing my report this afternoon. Unless new concerns arise, you should not expect further visits regarding this complaint. Emily's shoulders dropped slightly, like a weight had been lifted. After they left, I locked the door and leaned back against it. My knees felt weak. Emily stood nearby, staring at the closed door. Are we okay now? She asked quietly. Yes, I said, and my voice cracked. I cleared my throat. We are okay. Emily nodded, then surprised me by saying, Grandma lied. Yes, I said simply. Emily's lips pressed together. She looked angry now, not sad. Angry in a clean, sharp way that made her seem older. She made those people come here, Emily said. Yes. Why would she do that? Emily asked, and I could hear the confusion underneath the anger. Is it because of the recital? I swallowed. It's because I told her no. Emily stared at me. So, she wants you to say yes. Yes, I said again. Emily shook her head slowly. No, I agreed. It's not. I didn't tell her all of it. I didn't tell her about the affidavit details or the HOA complaints. I didn't tell her how Donna had always used pressure and shame to get her way. Emily didn't need the whole ugly adult story. She needed the truth in a shape she could hold. We were safe. Grandma was wrong. And we didn't have to obey someone who used fear. That afternoon, I met with the attorney. Her office smelled like coffee and printer toner. Her name was Dana Whitfield, and she was blunt in the way you want an attorney to be. She flipped through my binder without commenting for a few minutes, just reading. Then she looked up. Your mother threatened you in writing, she said. Yes, I replied. And then she initiated a report that resulted in a home visit, Dana said, tapping the page with her pen. That's a pattern. It's coercion. My stomach tightened. What can I do? Dana leaned back. You can document everything, which you've already done. You can send a cease and desist letter through me. If they keep showing up, contacting your workplace, or filing additional false reports, we can pursue a civil protection order. I nodded. They're doing this because of the lake house. And? Dana's eyes narrowed slightly. And why are they so desperate for your signature? I hesitated. Because I think they're not compliant. And because my name would make it look legitimate. I'm stay. Dana looked at me for a long moment. Then do not sign anything. Do not attend any meetings, and do not speak to them in person again. I took a breath. What if they keep using agencies against me? Dana's voice stayed steady. Then we respond the same way every time. Calmly, with paperwork, and we make it clear to the court that they're abusing the system. I walked out of her office feeling exhausted and strangely clear. Donna had tried to scare me into submission, and instead she'd handed me something she couldn't control, an official record that the complaint didn't hold up. She'd wanted to paint me as unstable. Instead, she'd brought professionals into my home who could see I wasn't. On the drive home, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from another unknown number. I didn't answer. I pulled over and listened. It was Mark. His voice was low and angry. You think you're so smart, Rachel. You think you can hide behind paperwork. Mom told me family services came. You really want to make Mom look like a liar? Fine. But just remember, you're the one who started this. My hands went cold on the steering wheel. Started this. I pictured Emily under stage lights, scanning empty seats. I pictured Donna at a sports bar, smiling in photos while my daughter played. I pictured Mark pounding on my door with my child upstairs listening. I pictured a police officer standing in my kitchen because my mother didn't like the word no. And I realized Mark actually believed what he was saying. In their world, I had started this the moment I stopped being useful. I drove home, picked Emily up from her friend's house, and made dinner. We ate at the table like normal. Emily told me about a funny video Ava had shown her. I smiled and laughed at the right moments. But inside, a decision hardened. Donna had crossed the line into something that could have taken Emily from me, even temporarily, even just in fear. There was no going back to polite distance now. This wasn't about hurt feelings. This was about protection. And if Donna and Mark wanted a fight with paperwork and consequences, then they were about to get one. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted my life back. The county moved faster than I expected. On Monday morning, 3 days after the home visit, I was at my desk, finishing a report, when my phone buzzed with a notification from a local news alert I barely paid attention to. The headline was bland, the kind of thing most people scroll past. County issues, stop work notice, after shoreline complaint in Lakeview subdivision. My stomach flipped. I clicked it. The article was short, with one small photo. A blurry shot of a house near the water, orange tape stretched across a set of steps. I recognized the angle of the railing. I recognized the dock in the background. Mark's place. The article mentioned unpermitted structural changes and shoreline setback violations. It mentioned an investigation and potential fines. It quoted a county spokesperson saying enforcement was ongoing and residents should follow permit requirements. I sat still at my desk, my hands flat on the table, feeling a strange mix of dread and relief. Dread because I knew what was coming. Relief because the truth was no longer something I carried alone in a folder. They couldn't talk their way out of a county notice. At 9:17 I stared at the screen. Unknown number. I didn't answer. At 9:19, It rang again. At 9:22, an email hit my inbox from Jenna. Subject line: What did you do? The message was one paragraph, no greeting. Mark's job site just got shut down. The HOA is freaking out. The lender is asking questions. Mom is crying. If you reported us, you better fix it. This is insane. My hands stayed steady as I read it. There was no apology, no admission, no, we were wrong. Just blame and demands. At 9:30, another email, this time from Donna's new account. Subject line: You have destroyed your brother. Her message was longer, full of dramatic language about betrayal and turning on family and ruining a good man's life. She accused me of being vindictive. She accused me of being jealous. She accused me of mental instability again, but more subtly this time, like she'd learned from the home visit that she needed to sound careful. Then came the line that made my blood run cold. If you think this ends with a stop work notice, you're mistaken. Mark has rights. I have rights. And Emily deserves a stable environment. There it was again. Emily. Always the leverage. I forwarded both emails to Dana Whitfield, then saved them into the folder. At lunchtime, my boss, Greg, knocked on my office door. You have a minute? He asked. I nodded, forcing my face neutral. Greg stepped inside and closed the door. I'm not trying to pry, he said. But I just got a call from someone claiming to be your family. They asked questions about your mental state and your work. My stomach tightened. Was it my mother? Greg's eyes narrowed. Donna Reed? Yeah. I exhaled slowly. She's retaliating because I refused to sign something unethical for my brother. Greg leaned against the filing cabinet. I told her we don't discuss employees with anyone, but you need to know. She sounded convincing. A familiar shame tried to rise in me, old reflex, old conditioning. Donna always sounded convincing. That was her skill. I have documentation, I said. And I'm working with an attorney. Greg studied my face. Are you okay? Yes, I said firmly. I'm okay. My child is okay. Greg nodded slowly. All right, just keep me in the loop. And if she calls again, I'm blocking the number. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. That afternoon, I picked Emily up and took her to the fish tank restaurant like I'd promised. We sat in a booth pressed up against the giant aquarium. Blue light moved across Emily's face as fish drifted past. She watched them like she could disappear into that calm world if she stared long enough. I ordered her chicken tenders and fries, because that's what she always got there. I ordered a salad I barely touched. Emily dipped a fry in ketchup and asked, Did Grandma stop being mad? I looked at her and chose truth in the smallest, safest shape. No, I said. Grandma is still mad. Emily's eyebrows pulled together. Because you said no? Yes, I said. Emily stared into the tank. A yellow fish swam past, slow and indifferent. What happens now? I swallowed. Now we keep living our life, and we keep our space. Emily was quiet for a moment, then said, I looked at her. She's right. Emily turned toward me. Did Uncle Mark break rules? I didn't want to put Mark's wrongdoing on her shoulders, but I also didn't want to lie. I didn't want her learning that the truth is something you hide to protect people who don't protect you. I think he did, I said carefully. And I think Grandma wanted me to cover for him. Emily's eyes widened. Like that, I said. Emily's face tightened, and for a second she looked more like me than she ever had. That's not fair, she said. You could get in trouble. Yes, I said softly. That's why I said no. Emily turned back to the tank. So, you're doing the right thing, she said. Not as a question, but as a conclusion. I felt my throat burn. I'm trying. After dinner, we went home and I helped her practice for the auditions. She played through her piece twice, the second time smoother, more confident. When she finished, she looked at me and asked, Will you come even if I mess up? I will come even if you play the whole thing backwards, I said, and she actually smiled. That night, after she fell asleep, my phone buzzed again. A message from Dana. They're escalating. I recommend we file for a civil protection order based on harassment and misuse of reporting. I can draft a petition tomorrow. Do not engage. Keep saving everything. I stared at the message, the glow of the screen lighting my hands. A protection order felt like a cliff edge. It wasn't just a boundary. It was a legal line in the sand. Part of me still wanted to believe Donna would stop once the county stepped in, once consequences landed. But Donna wasn't built to accept consequences. She was built to redirect them, to find someone else to carry them. And now that Mark's lake house project was officially in trouble publicly, financially, legally, Donna needed a scapegoat more than ever. That scapegoat was me. The next day, Dana filed the petition. I signed it in her office with a pen that felt heavy in my hand. She explained that the court would review it quickly because it involved harassment and a prior agency report. She told me to keep my routine stable. She told me to document any contact. 2 days later, after Emily's audition practice, I opened my door to find a padded envelope on the porch. No return address, just my name. Handwritten in Donna's neat cursive. My stomach turned. Inside was a stack of printed screenshots. My social media posts. Old ones. Years old. Photos of me holding a drink at a friend's wedding. A post where I joked about being exhausted as a single mom. A picture of Emily with messy hair and marker on her hands. Harmless things, ripped out of context and highlighted with yellow marker like they were evidence. There was a sticky note on top. This is what people will see if you keep this up. My hands went cold. Donna wasn't trying to argue with me anymore. She was threatening to ruin me. I stood on my porch holding that envelope, feeling the air go thin in my lungs. My mind raced through all the ways she could use this. Send it to my boss, to Emily's school, to neighbors. Make me look unstable, careless, unfit. I walked inside and locked the door. Then, I did something I hadn't done since I was a child. I sat down on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinets, and let myself shake. Not because I was weak, because I finally understood the shape of the trap. Donna didn't need to win the lake house fight. She just needed to make me pay for resisting. And if she was willing to threaten my reputation and my child's stability, then the family I'd been trying to protect for years had never existed. It was only control, and it was about to collapse, one way or another. The envelope didn't scare me into silence the way Donna expected. It scared me into clarity. The next morning, I brought it to Dana's office. I didn't call it blackmail. I didn't use dramatic words. I just laid it on her desk and watched her face as she flipped through the highlighted screenshots. Dana's expression didn't change much, but her eyes hardened. "This helps," she said. "How?" I asked, my voice tight. "It shows intent," she said. "It's retaliation. It's intimidation. And it's directed at your parental fitness narrative." I swallowed. So she really is trying to make me look unfit. "Yes," Dana said plainly. "Because that's the only lever she has left that scares you." She wasn't wrong. Dana filed the envelope as an exhibit. She told me the court date for the temporary protection order hearing was set for the following week. She told me to keep my routine steady, to keep Emily insulated, and to keep responding through legal channels only. Walking out of her office, I felt both lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because I wasn't alone in it anymore. The kind of thing I used to associate with other people's lives, not mine. That weekend, Emily did her solo audition. We arrived early. The school hallway smelled like pencil shavings and lemon cleaner. Kids in black concert clothes stood in clusters with their instruments. Parents hovered with water bottles and quiet encouragement. Emily wore her simple black dress, the one we'd bought at Target, and she held her violin case like she was carrying a sleeping animal. I knelt in front of her and said, "You don't have to be perfect." Emily nodded, then surprised me by leaning forward and hugging me hard. "Thanks for coming," she whispered into my shoulder. My throat tightened so much I couldn't speak. I just squeezed her back and let her go. When her name was called, she walked into the audition room without looking behind her. The door clicked shut. I waited in the hallway with my hands clasped together so tightly my fingers hurt. I didn't check my phone. I didn't scroll. I didn't let Donna steal this moment too. Emily came out 10 minutes later with her cheeks flushed and her eyes bright. "How'd it go?" I asked. She exhaled and smiled. The real kind this time. "I didn't mess up the hard part." I laughed once, shaky. "That's amazing." She shrugged like she was trying to play it cool, but her smile stayed. "It felt good," she said. That night, we celebrated with pizza on the couch and a movie. Emily fell asleep halfway through, curled against a pillow, her hair still faintly smelling like the stage hairspray Miss Keller kept in her office. I carried her to bed and stood in her doorway for a long moment, watching her breathe. This was what mattered. Not Donna's threats. Not Mark's anger. Not the lake house. Not the smear campaign. Emily's safety. Emily's sense of worth. The court hearing came faster than I expected. Dana met me outside the courthouse, her hair pulled back, a thick folder under her arm. The building was cold inside, all echoing hallways and worn tile. I held my own folder like it was armor. My stomach was twisted in knots, but my face stayed composed. I'd learned that from Donna, if nothing else. Never give them the satisfaction of seeing you break. Donna arrived with Mark and Jenna. She wore a cream-colored coat and pearls, like she was attending church. Mark looked furious, jaw clenched, eyes darting around like he wanted everyone to notice him. Jenna looked pale and tight-lipped, clutching her purse with both hands. They sat behind Donna like supporting actors in her performance. Donna didn't look at me until we were called into the courtroom. When she did, her face softened into an expression I recognized from my childhood. Wounded mother. The one she used when she wanted sympathy without accountability. The judge was a middle-aged woman with reading glasses and a voice that cut through nonsense. Dana spoke first. She presented the timeline. The demands for professional services and an affidavit. The threats in writing. The uninvited visit. The retaliatory report to family services. The misuse of the system. The envelope with highlighted screenshots. She did it calmly, like it was obvious. Then Donna spoke. She told the judge she was concerned about me. She said I'd been isolating Emily. She said she'd been worried about my mental health since my divorce. She said I was holding grudges and punishing family. The judge asked, Miss Reed, did you threaten to involve services if your daughter didn't comply with your request? Donna blinked, feigning confusion. I would never threaten my daughter. Dana slid the printed email across. The one that said, family services will be contacting you, and if you want this to stop, you know what to do. Donna's face tightened for half a second before she recovered. That was taken out of context. The judge looked unimpressed. Out of what context would that sentence be appropriate? Donna's mouth opened, then closed. The judge asked, why did you ask your daughter to sign an affidavit related to your son's property renovation? Donna's chin lifted. Rachel is a professional. We thought she could help. Help with what? The judge pressed. Donna hesitated, then said, with paperwork. Dana held up the renovation PDF and the HOA minutes. She didn't argue about whether Mark broke rules. She didn't need to. She showed the judge the pattern. They needed Rachel's name and credibility. When Rachel refused, they escalated to intimidation. The judge turned to me. Miss Morgan, she said, do you feel your mother's actions have created fear or harassment? I took a breath and answered plainly, yes. She has used threats and agencies to pressure me. She has shown up uninvited. She has contacted my workplace. She has tried to frame me as unstable because I said no. I want her to stop. NEM? The judge nodded once and looked down at her notes. Then she looked up and said, temporary protection order granted. Donna's face went stiff. Mark swore under his breath. Jenna stared at the floor. The judge continued, Miss Reed, you are to have no contact with Miss Morgan or her child directly or indirectly. No calls, no emails, no third-party messages, no visits to the home, no contact with the school, no contact with the workplace. Any violation will be addressed. That's stopping. Donna's eyes widened like she couldn't believe the world had rules that applied to her. In the hallway afterward, Mark tried to approach me. Officer deputies stepped between us. Dana placed a hand on my elbow and guided me toward the exit. Outside, the air felt sharp and clean. I stood on the courthouse steps and took a breath that felt like it reached all the way to my spine. I didn't feel triumph. I felt relief. 2 weeks later, the county enforcement case against Mark's lake house became public enough that even my neighbors heard about it. The HOA placed a lien for unpaid fines and legal fees. The lender paused the refinance. Contractors walked off the job. Mark's social media went quiet, then turned bitter, vague posts about snakes and betrayal. Donna couldn't call me to rage about it. She couldn't send me emails. She couldn't show up at my door. The protection order made her quiet in the only language she understood: consequences. The final twist came in a place Donna never thought to look. My landlord called me one afternoon and said, Hey, I got a weird request. Someone asked if the house is going up for sale and whether you're planning to stay. My stomach tightened. Who asked? He hesitated. A woman named Donna Reed. Said she's your mother. Even with a court order, Donna was still trying. Still circling. Still looking for a way in. I called Dana immediately. She told me it was a violation contact through a third party with intent to gather information. She documented it and warned Donna through the court. And that was the moment I made the choice I hadn't wanted to make. I moved. Not in a dramatic overnight escape. In a planned, quiet way. I found a small townhouse closer to Emily's school and the arts center. I signed the lease under my name only. I updated the school with new contact restrictions. I gave the address to exactly 3 people I trusted. I didn't post about it. I didn't check in. I didn't give Donna breadcrumbs. On our last night in the old house, Emily sat on the living room floor, surrounded by half-packed boxes, and said, "Is Grandma going to know where we live?" "No," I said. Emily nodded slowly, then asked, "Is that sad?" I thought about it. About the idea of a loving grandmother that had never matched the reality. About the way Emily had stopped hoping. About the night in the auditorium. About the police officer in my kitchen. "It's sad," I said honestly, "but it's also safe." Emily looked at me for a long moment, then said, "I like safe." So did I. A month after we moved, Emily got her audition results. She made the spring solo roster. When she read the email, she didn't scream or jump. She just sat down on the couch and smiled to herself, like she was letting it sink in privately before sharing it. Then she looked up and said, "Can we invite Ava's family to the performance?" "Yes," I said, and my throat tightened. "Of course. And Miss Keller," she added. "Yes." Emily hesitated, then said softly, "Not Grandma." "No," I said gently. "Not Grandma." Emily nodded once, calm, like she'd accepted it. Then she stood up, walked to her violin case, and opened it right there in the living room of our new home. She started to play. The sound filled the space, bright and steady, and I felt something inside me settle for the first time in a long time. Donna had promised I would regret losing my family, but standing there in the quiet, listening to my daughter play without fear of who might disappoint her next. The family I thought I was losing had been gone for years. All I'd done was stop chasing it.